Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Colavito. I'm one of the career development advisors in the Career Center. Thank you for joining us today for our Networking 102 presentation. So hopefully some of you maybe have already participated in Networking 101, which is kind of a general overview of how to network both in person and virtually. This is going to go a little bit deeper into LinkedIn specifically and other opportunities for online networking. Just a few logistics before we get started. I'm dropping this in the chat as well. The event is being recorded and you'll receive a copy of that recording and the slides following the session via email. And if you could please do your best to put all of your questions into the Q&A box of the BlueJeans platform. It just a little bit easier to keep track of as we're going through today. We'd love to see and address your questions throughout the session. Just that's an easier place to make sure that we can see those. So again, I'm Laura Colavito. We are lucky enough today to be joined by Amber Lawrence from ABB. So I'm just going to toss it to her to let her introduce herself, but she's going to be able to give us some great perspective from the hiring and recruiting side of things as it refers to LinkedIn and networking in general.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. Hi, everyone. I am super excited to be here today and talking with you all about LinkedIn and online networking. As mentioned, my name is Amber Lawrence, so I am our Early Talent Internship Program Manager at ABB, but I'm also involved with university relations, so coming and talking with awesome students like yourselves, recruiting for our early talent programs at ABB. But I started my career really early on in early talent, so networking, talking about these different workshops is definitely a passion of mine. So I'm excited to add to the conversation and hopefully be able to answer some of your awesome questions today.
Great, thank you. So as far as what we're going to talk about today, we'll do a little bit of an overview about LinkedIn and online networking in general. We're going to go into more detail around how to build your LinkedIn profile and what to focus on, as well as creating a positive online persona. We're going to talk about ways that you can leverage LinkedIn when it comes to obviously your network, but also job searching as well. And then some other ways of networking, both through LinkedIn and other sites online. There will be some time for questions at the end, but I'll go ahead and pause and address questions as we get them through the chat. I don't want to get too far past a topic before we address anything if you need clarification. So feel free to just drop questions in the chat as they come to mind. And when we get to a pause in the content, we will try to address those. So getting started, overview. Many of you have probably heard of LinkedIn. It is probably the most utilized professional online networking site. When you're searching for individuals, it pops up quickly on Google results. And this is a great opportunity for you to brand yourself. So it gives you more than your space on your resume to sort of market yourself to potential recruiters. And it gives you a way to control your narrative as well in terms of, again, you're not limited by that one page if you're an undergrad of your resume. It's also a great source of passive candidates for many recruiters, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. It may be less useful for you now as a college student than potentially later in your career in terms of that passive candidate pool. But it is a great place to get found as well for potential jobs by recruiters who are headhunting. It's a way for you to search for opportunities. There is a jobs component, a companies component. There's a lot of information to be found in LinkedIn beyond individuals. And it's a great way to expand upon your resume, potentially provide additional pieces of information or links, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. So a few tips about building your profile. So if you do not have an account yet, obviously you're going to need to create one. So make sure you select student when you're registering for that. One of the tips, and this is all gathered from research and also feedback, Amber's going to give her perspective on this as well. It's helpful to have a descriptive headline. This is the piece under Laura Garcia's role, where it says she's a mechanical engineering sophomore seeking a summer 2022 co-op position. This information gives a sense of who you are to the reader even before they click on your profile and look at it. So that can be very helpful. It's important that you have a professional photo. I hope some of you were able to attend the career fair the last 2 days and take advantage of the professional headshots we were providing there, but something that is a clean background and a nicely lit photo of your head and shoulders is appropriate for a headshot there. The Ask Me should, or the About Me should contain a summary of your background, including your skills, education, and former goals. A lot of this might mirror some of the content that you provide in a Tell Me About Yourself, but this is just a place to sort of give that summary. And then in the experience section, it's going to similarly mimic the experience section of your resume. It's going to automatically put that in reverse chronological order. But it's also going to give you the opportunity to expand upon those experiences, again, potentially provide additional information, and also not limit you to just a certain number that you can fit on your page. For those of you who are early in your academic careers, you may not have internships or work experience yet. There's a good place there for you to emphasize projects rather than job experiences. You can also focus on volunteer work, skills, student organizations or other organizations that you're a part of, and then any honors that you've received as well. It's important to include your student involvement. Again, we talk about this when it comes to resumes, but any opportunity that you've had to use and build your skills is going to be of interest to a recruiter. So if you're in your first or second year and you haven't landed a professional internship yet, that's okay. If you have been part of a student organization where you've been working in a team or providing leadership or even just participating in it as a member, that involvement is relevant for a recruiter to know about, especially if it is academic in nature in a place where you've been able to use skills. Another way to use LinkedIn is to just get more information about the job market in general. You have the opportunity to follow certain companies so that you can see their updates, where they'll often share work that they're doing, innovations that they've had, potentially even jobs that are available for those organizations. The customized URL tip is an option that's available in your profile. You're given sort of a number at the end of your URL in addition to your name, and that's the default setting. But if you're going to include a link to your LinkedIn profile on your resume, it can be helpful to customize that URL so that it's not quite as ambiguous. And so there is an option to that in your profile setting. And then when you receive these slides, you'll get a link here to some additional reading around the recommendations around building a profile. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Amber for a minute. Amber, do you have any information that you might be able to share with students about what you like to see when you're looking at a student profile?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first and foremost, I want to say, actually fill it out, right? I can't tell you how many times I've gone to LinkedIn and I have an awesome resume in front of me, but I see their LinkedIn profile and all it has is no photo, their university, and that's it. This is your online resume. This is your opportunity to get in front of, recruiters and hiring managers that maybe you don't even know are looking at you, right? So you have done the hard part. You've made your resume, the bullet points, right? We know that takes time, not always the most exciting task you have on your to-do list. So use your resume, copy and paste those bullet points in there. You have the impact you've made in your different projects, your volunteer work, in the different roles you're in. So use that, right? Put it right on here. Make sure it's super filled out. Go above and beyond. Highlight all of your achievements because on a LinkedIn page, you aren't limited, right? And recruiters are definitely looking. So I love to see if you've been involved on campus, if you have any awards or honors. Those things definitely stand out. Maybe you're just a member, totally fine, right? Maybe you have a leadership position. Really elaborate on that. What have you done in that leadership position? Maybe you're mentoring students or tutoring. maybe you're a student athlete, whatever you are doing in your career, your college career, and what you're getting exposure to, definitely fill it out. I would say as well, the photo, double check your security settings as well, because you can have privacy settings to where only people who you connect with can see your photo. I will just throw out there, I've seen research that if you have a photo that's public, it does get more views. So just something to keep in mind. Of course, I would always want you to be comfortable with your privacy settings and make sure they're, what you feel comfortable putting out there. But there is research that shows if you have a public profile photo, you will get more views from recruiters, more messages, all of that's kind of aligned. So just a helpful hint there. But yes, I think fill it out. Don't make your descriptive headline too specific to where it hurts you. I think, the one that Laura has up here, mechanical engineering, sophomore seeking summer 2022 co-op, perfect. It's general enough for her to speak to various different companies about various different roles that might interest her. I don't know if you guys are like me. When I was in college, I didn't know what I wanted to do, right? I was not one of the lucky few who knew exactly my path quite yet. So leaving some ambiguity there and some general interest is going to not deter different recruiters from reaching out with certain different opportunities. If it's too specific, they might see your profile and say, oh, well, they're not interested. I won't reach out, right? So I think it's just being very mindful and intentional of what you're putting on here to make sure that you are building a brand that's going to really, attract the different employers and opportunities that you want to be exposed to.
Yeah, those are great points. Thank you for adding that. And I did notice now, I'm looking closely at this highlight here, the show recruiters you're open to work. So for those of you who aren't familiar with that setting within LinkedIn, if you follow the steps, the get started pathway through that, it gives you an opportunity to indicate the types of positions that you're interested in and even the location of those positions. I actually think you're required to put a location in there, and there may even be a differentiation between whether you're seeking in-person or virtual work. I can't remember, as I'm not personally currently looking for work. I don't know, and Amber, I'm interested to your thoughts on this. So what it does if you do enable that feature is put a little banner underneath your headshot. So it kind of follows that circle, and it's green, and it says open to work. And so that serves to inform recruiters that you're available. So if you're, I think it's more useful if you're in a current job. That's why I want to get your thoughts, Amber, because then an employer knows, hey, they are employed somewhere right now, but if they're open to work, then I might have a chance to poach them for the job that I'm trying to fill. What's your sense on whether that's useful for the college level applicant?
Yes, that's a great question. I think it's very useful. So I mentioned, I've really focused only in early talent ever since I began my recruiting career. And the people who have open to work are the people that I reach out to first, because you're more likely to be receptive and open to hearing about the opportunity I'm presenting versus someone who doesn't have that, right? I know some level you're open, you're looking, you want to hear about things. So I would say absolutely fill it out, put locations. That's going to help you really get more targeted approach from a recruiter for opportunities that might actually catch your eye as well. So I think on both ends, it makes it a little bit more specific to know that you're going to get things that align with what you want, but also that recruiter is going to say, oh, this list of people who are open to work or networking or opportunities, whatever it says, there's a few different, I think, options you can choose. That's definitely my first go-to when I'm sourcing and reaching out to students to see if they would be interested in something I have to offer.
Great. I'm glad I asked that. That's really good feedback. Thank you. All right. So moving forward, I think Amber is going to talk a little bit about this in terms of, what does it mean to have a positive online persona? How is that then received by the recruiters that are seeing your profile or the contacts at companies that you're reaching out to?
Yes, so creating your online persona, I like to think of this as, personal brand, right? It's something we hear all the time, build your personal brand, build your personal brand. What does that mean? Right? I think that that's something, I talk with early talent about all the time because we know we need to do it, but how do we do it? Where do we begin? So from my point of view, it's all about just being intentional. It's showing who you are. I think if we've learned anything the last few years, it's not just bringing your professional self to an organization, you're bringing your whole authentic, genuine person to an organization. How can you really create that identity using LinkedIn? And that's a great outlet to do it, right? Online. So definitely wanting to showcase your talents, your work, but I always say don't be a lurker, right? I'm guilty of this as much as anyone else, getting on LinkedIn, just kind of like some things I'm seeing every now and then, but actually interact, right? Follow those leaders that you are, interested in their field, interested in their industry, like what those companies are doing. Follow them, connect with them. Well, mostly it'll be follow for the leaders and whatnot in the companies, but interact with the post, comment on it, share if it's something really cool that you want people in your network to see. The more that you interact with those posts, the more not only are you going to show up for them, right? Your name's going to keep popping up. They're going to see your photo. They're going to see that you're really interested, and it's not just saying in your headline you're interested, but you're putting action behind that. But they're also vice versa. Those are going to show up for you more too, right? So you're kind of telling your algorithm what you want to see and the different people that you interact with. So post your own things too, right? You guys are doing projects. You might have an online portfolio depending on your major and what you do. Use that. Use the things that you're doing in your classes and your projects and your student orgs, in your internships to highlight the work that you're doing. And that you can easily just kind of upload from where you're doing it to your LinkedIn so other people can see. So definitely contribute, show your work, comment. If you do have an online site or portfolio, you can link it to your LinkedIn. People can go to your profile, easily be directed to that more larger piece of work that you want them to see. But also remember, whether you're not intentionally building a brand or not, you are, right? You're online, you're on LinkedIn, you're building a professional reputation and brand. Might as well make sure you're being intentional about it, following people that are going to help lead you and your career in a way that's going to benefit you. And make sure that that's also offline, right? Online, offline, everywhere we go, we're building that brand. So just being intentional, making sure that you're utilizing all that you can, put your your best foot forward. You are being a competitive candidate by really taking advantage of all of the pieces of LinkedIn that allows you to show what exactly you're doing.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So these other pieces that could potentially add to that, these are somewhat secondary in importance to initially sharing your work and kind of mimicking that resume, but getting skill endorsements is something that will add to your credibility as you move forward, as well as having recommendations. So if a recruiter or someone like Amber is looking through your profile and they see that you have some of these great work experiences, and then you also have a recommendation from a colleague or a supervisor at one of those internships that you had, or even a volunteer experience that you were a part of, that can really speak to some of the difficult to measure pieces of a candidate. And I didn't mention this earlier. I worked as a recruiter for a consulting firm in a previous role, and I think there's something hard to quantify about what makes a really strong candidate, and that has to do with things like resourcefulness, timeliness, communication skills that sometimes can be really hard to convey in a resume. So if you can have recommendations on your LinkedIn profile where people are speaking to those personal attributes of yours that make you a good employee, regardless of the type of work that you've been doing, or they could potentially address your expertise in a certain skill area, but those things can really add credibility to the experiences that you've already provided. Amber just talked about including examples of your work, whether that's linking things directly in your profile, which we're going to talk about in a second, or linking a profile or a portfolio where you have an accumulation. Another way to expand upon that and also expand your network in LinkedIn is to join groups and display them on your profile. So that can indicate to a reader, where your interests lie, both professionally or even socially. Again, you're talking about bringing your whole self to work. So being authentic in the things that truly interest you and in how you spend your time is relevant to an employer who is not just evaluating what you do, but also the context within where you're working. So if you're involved in some student organizations or community organizations outside of your academic and work experiences, that can be relevant. Um, and then, of course, it can be helpful to have all these things present on your profile as you're reaching out to professionals or other alums, which we'll talk about in a minute as well. These things can just help provide context for who it is that you're reaching out with. So this is just a visual to go along with that past slide. This is another example of a potential headline that you might use. This might be a student who has already landed a position, so they're less in the job searching part of the process and more into the networking. So this shows a headline. They're an incoming investment banking analyst. They have some more information about who they are, what they're pursuing, and what their skills are accommodated there. And you'll see on the right where this person was able to post some images of this aerodynamics project that they worked on. And then as well, just showcasing the skills and endorsement section and the recommendation section. Amber, what are your thoughts on some of these additional pieces of the profile?
Yes, I love what you said of it. Sometimes it's hard to quantify a great candidate, right? I think that's so specific for early talent because you don't know everything, right? And that's okay. Internships and co-ops, like, how you get them to get experience so you can have more of that quantifiable, I made this impact, right? So I think if you get an internship, if you are, in opportunities where you can get these recommendations, that is so helpful because the number one thing I look for in any intern coming into ABB is those things that I can't teach you, right? We're going to teach you our processes. We're going to teach you how to do the job day to day, but I can't make someone be deadline driven, right? I can't make someone take feedback well and implement it. Those are more ingrained in how you work and your work ethic and who you are, right? So or you can train those, but it's harder, right? So we look for a lot of those soft skills. And if you're in an internship, I tell all of my interns in my program, take initiative, make the most of this opportunity. ABB, for example, we're a global organization. There's over 100,000 employees in our company. So once you're in it, make the most of it, right? Meet all the people you can, see other teams that you engage with, meet those leaders. Maybe you're in an internship, you're getting a great experience, but you're like, this isn't for me, right? This isn't the job I want to do moving into my career, full time. So maybe you're engaging and networking internally to see other teams that have opportunities. Maybe you can do another internship, see something new within the team. And having that internal, while you're an internal employee connection is really going to help you. So I love that you were talking about too, it can be once you have the job as well. The networking doesn't end. It's not just to get you a job or an internship. It's always happening. I think I'm a great example. The role that I'm in now came from networking, right? That's how I am here at ABB now. So it never ends. It's something that's always going and you're always building on. So just consistently thinking, how can I really build my network in the situation I'm in? What can I add online? Can I ask my manager for recommendations? Can I ask, my professors for recommendations? Maybe you have an advisor for your student org who's seen some things that you've done really well. Find those recommendations where you can to really have people who have seen you, from a leadership perspective, talk to all of the awesome things that you do on a more soft skill basis as well.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And Amber, I think we talked about this. Amber and I partnered on a networking 101 presentation in the fall, and I think we talked about this during that presentation. I received most of my jobs through networking after the initial one I got out of college. So I think for a lot of you down the road, like, yes, this is a means to an end, potentially to find an internship right now, to learn about certain organizations, but networking is definitely a long game. It's something that's going to serve you throughout your career. and really be important in terms of taking advantage of and finding opportunities. So let's figure out how to go to the next slide. There we go. So thinking about switching gears here into the research and outreach phase. So we talked a lot about how to establish your presence on LinkedIn. Now you're ready to start using it to look into companies, look into jobs, and actually do some outreach with these organizations. So this slide just gives some information on how to start with that. It can feel really daunting for some people to start with these what feel like blind connections. So the first place to start, start with your friends or classmates who are in your major, people that you know in person, and build out your network with those people. Sure, your classmate who is also a second year in your major isn't necessarily going to be able to provide you with job opportunities, but you're going to be connected with them 15 years from now when they're established in their career, and so are you, and you never know where these connections are going to lead you down the road. So that's a great place to start building your network. You can all help each other with that in terms of sharing resources and opportunities. Then you can branch out a little further. Once you feel comfortable with that, you branch out into potentially recent alumni. So you can search, which we'll show you a slide on in a minute, through the alumni tab of the Georgia Tech institution LinkedIn page, and connect with alums in the last 2 or 3 years from your major who are potentially working in careers that might interest you. We'll talk a little bit more about those logistics. You can also leverage the institutional pages outside of the main one. So there's the university-wide as well as college-specific institutional pages, which may also have specific alumni information there as well. Then you want to think about, not just your academic life, but also your social life, your housing, your student organizations. Who do you know in those groups that are, working in areas that interest you or have overlap in terms of their career goals? Go ahead and connect with those people as well. Again, you may see things that they're sharing, from articles to companies they're interested in, that you weren't aware of in the past. So it's a great place to, again, sort of start at that ground floor and start expanding your network in that direction. Again, we're kind of further expanding from this central hub of Georgia Tech. You can go into professional organizations. So maybe you're in a professional organization, potentially a Georgia Tech chapter of a national professional organization. Look through the national level of that organization. See if there are people in that group that are doing work that you're interested in. Look for people in the business community of the city where you're hoping to search for jobs and do some outreach then. And then we're going to talk about just the mechanics of doing some of that outreach in a minute, but it's important to always include a personalized message as you're conducting this outreach and connecting with colleagues, to have a higher success rate in terms of the acceptance of that invitation. Do you have any thoughts on sort of where to get started when you're trying to build your network on LinkedIn, Amber?
I think you did a great job of covering this. I think just to add of like the alumni, I am consistently blown away by the support of ambassadors at ABB, at previous companies I've worked for, that people want to support their, alumni, right? They want to go back to their alma mater. They want to support the students who are graduating, whatever way that looks like. So some want to get on campus and talk with you. Some want to mentor. Some would love to be somebody that got a message and see how they can support them. So I know it does feel daunting, and you want to be respectful of the way. I know we're going to talk about how to connect and sending that message, and you don't want to be in their inbox every day, right? But I just say that because I want you to know people want to support you. People want to see you succeed. They want to give back. Their journey, they didn't get where they are alone either. They had help from their network and from people who mentored them and were advocates for them. And the process continues. So I just share that of hopefully taking some of the pressure off, that people want to support you and they're there. You just have to take advantage of it and really reach out to build those connections to see how you can really utilize those relationships and make them mutually beneficial as well.
And for those of you who are early, maybe first or second years, I don't know if you might have had someone from your high school reach out to you or even via your parents connect you and say, hey, my daughter or son is interested in attending Georgia Tech next year. Do you mind sharing what your experience has been like so far? I mean, more often than not, it doesn't necessarily feel like a burden on you to be able to answer those few questions for a student that's looking at your school. And so, like Amber said, especially for those early career alums who are just a few years out of school, they viscerally remember what it's like being in your shoes. They know how hard this process is to build connections and search for jobs. And so, more often than not, they're more than eager to provide feedback and help with that process. Just for those of you who are not aware, just on the mechanics of how to search for alumni, if you go to the institutional page, there are tabs along there, and you go over to the alumni tab on the right, and that's going to give you access to 190,000. Now, this number, for whatever reason, changes daily. I've seen it range anywhere from 190 to 205 in the last couple of weeks. So whatever is involved in that categorization, who knows? But there's plenty of people out there who are available through this system to at least figure out where they are. So there's a few ways that you can use this tool. One is just career explanation. So you want to say, what is someone doing? Like say you're, a BME and you don't know exactly what you want to do with your degree. You can go and search for other biomedical engineering majors and look at the companies where they're working. Look at their job titles. You can even click on a profile for someone who's a few years into their job search and look back and see, where did they intern? Where did they start their first job? Where did they move on to after that? If they've got some experience under their belt. It can just give you a lot of insight into how people are using their education and what their career paths have been, even if you don't end up reaching out to connect with them. You can get a lot of information just from looking through there to give yourself some ideas, start building out a target list of companies that you might be interested in, and then hopefully ultimately conducting some outreach and connecting with some. When you're looking to network, again, if you identify alumni who are working at the organizations that you're interested in, that's going to be your most likely source of information. Sometimes you can't directly message someone you're not connected to if you don't have LinkedIn Premium, which is a paid sort of upgraded version of LinkedIn. But you can include a personalized message with a request to connect. I do think it's possible to message people that you share some sort of group with or affiliation. So I'm not 100% sure on where that delineation is between whether or not you can be contacted via message. It's also a setting that people can make individually to not accept messages from anyone they're not already connected with. And so in those cases, you want to be thoughtful about, is this really a good person? If it's someone who's the CEO of their organization, maybe they're not the best source of that connection request. We really recommend looking at alums who are less than 5 years out of undergrad or master's programs because they're going to be more at the level that you would be considering if you're thinking about those work. Not to say you can't sort of shoot for bigger fish, or if the context is appropriate for you to be reaching out to people with more experience in that, that's fine, especially if it's maybe a small company that only has one Georgia Tech alum there. That's fine. It's not a hard and fast rule. It's just in terms of the likelihood of that person having the desire and the available time to connect with you to answer those questions tends to be a little bit stronger in those early years after graduation. The other piece that you can use this for is from a career planning perspective. So we talked about that a little bit already. Like look at the experiences, especially if you're looking at internships with an ultimate goal in mind. So if you find people who are working at, let's say your dream company is Google, and you want to say, what path did these people take to get to Google? Look at their profiles and see where they interned, what type of work they engaged in that ultimately led them to those positions. And you can also mine it a little bit further. Look at the skills that they have. Look where their endorsements are. You know, if there are recommendations on their profile, what is it about that candidate that made them receive that recommendation? And how can you work to grow your skills in those areas? So I'm going to talk about this a little bit, and I'll let Amber share her perspective on this as well. So when you're adding connections, I think one, generally speaking, it's better to send a message than a connection request if it's someone that you don't already know. In the absence of that, then you want to add a customized message when you're inviting someone to connect with you. You do have a limit on the characters. So you're going to want to be brief and specific about why you're connecting with them. So we have a sample here on the left. Hello, Courtney. I noticed you were involved in the Georgia Tech Women's Resource Center, which is where I'm most active on campus. I'm considering a marketing career in the future and would love to learn more about your background. Thank you for considering joining my network. So there's the open-ended request of wanting to learn more about her background, but you are also sending a connection request. So she's acknowledging that in that message. So once you send that message, if they accept the connection, then you will be able to interact with them via message, which is when you would follow up and request a 15-minute phone call, video call, Skype, whatever it might be, to ask your questions and conduct an informational interview. We have the point here to start with alumni, not HR, and I'm going to let Amber share on that, and I'll give you my thoughts as well. You know, if you're looking to get a real sense of what the work is, and find someone who has the time and ability to chat with you on those things, alumni are going to be your best bet. HR is managing everything as it relates to every single candidate. So if you can imagine, if every single candidate who's interested in an organization tries to have those conversations with the recruiting representative of that organization, it would be impossible. They would spend every minute of every day having these conversations, even outside of the opportunities they have through their own outreach efforts. And so, you know, especially as you think of companies that are hiring at multiple universities, alumni are a great place to start because they're probably not being contacted by students of other universities who are interested in the organization. It just gives you a little bit of a better chance at getting a response and building that connection. Amber, I'd love for you to share your thoughts on sort of strategizing who to connect with and how to conduct that outreach.
Yes, I know you can't see my video, but I was kind of giggling to myself over here as you're talking, because I fully agree, right? You know, HR, recruiters, we're here to help you through the process and whatnot, but if you guys could see my LinkedIn, or if you've tried to message me or connect with me on LinkedIn lately, if we've met at another event, like, you know, I'm terrible at it right now. So my responses have been not great because during recruiting seasons, so fall and spring, we're on the go constantly, doing events at multiple schools, engaging with candidates. You know, our program, we hire over 150 summer interns, right? So not only are we doing multiple interviews for all of those positions, you know, continuing to stay in contact with people who have already accepted positions. There's a lot of things that are happening there behind the scenes. And so we never want to keep you without information, but sometimes during recruiting seasons, it's busy, right? I mean, it can take a little while to get those answers. So I think reaching out to alumni is an awesome, awesome way to also get some really authentic information, right? How did they get there? What do they like about their company? What do they do day to day? You know, HR and recruiting side, we can tell you about it, but we're not in those roles, right? Unless you're looking at HR, then that might be different. But, you know, if you're looking for a very specific industry or whatnot, you know, ABB, we are engineering and technology. And I will tell you right now, I'm the least technical person you will meet at ABB. When it comes to that side, right? I'm on the people side of things. So I think to really get some authentic information of that industry and what they do day to day, you're going to appreciate the viewpoint and the perspective of an alumni in that role more so anyway. HR is definitely going to be there to answer questions and support you too, but I like the idea of starting with alumni to just get your basic information. Starting that outreach and connections. I think that's a great place to start. You also reminded me, Laura, too, I think something we talked about last time in our other workshop on this is, if your parents, connect with them, right? Do they have colleagues that are in, or connections, professional connections, friends, neighbors in the industry that you're interested in? Great place to also start. As we talked on that slide before, of like how you build out, that could be a great place to see as well. Having those people know what you're majoring in, what you're looking to do, they can also be thinking of opportunities. So I just wanted to add that as well, because I think that's a good place as you're starting to branch out. If it makes sense for you, that can be kind of a nice place to start beginning those conversations.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. So just some logistics, because I know it can feel daunting, especially as you first get started with creating these connection requests. So when you are on a computer using LinkedIn and you do not have an option underneath someone's profile to message them, you will need to go ahead and click connect to be given the opportunity to personalize that note. So once you click connect, it's not sending the invitation right away. You choose the option to add a note, and that will open up the box where you can personalize the invitation and then send it. So just in case anyone's wondering there, if you're using the app, it's a little bit different. There's going to be the three dots you can see next to the follow and message section of, I have our president here as our sample. And then you click the three dots and click personalize invitation, and that allows you to put your message in to personalize the invitation to connect. Now, in terms of messaging, this is sort of an aside on this. If you are in a group like the Alumni Association or other LinkedIn groups, you do have the ability to message people within those groups. So that's just another way to potentially find and connect with other professionals who are in the industries. If you find someone through your alumni searches, you can look to see if they're involved in a mutual group or a member of a mutual group via LinkedIn that relates to a professional association or other thing. But you can join groups that they're a part of, and via the LinkedIn platform that will allow you to then send them a message as you are part of the same group. If you want to get a little bit sneaky with it, you can try to Google their name and company to see if their email address is published anywhere, if you'd rather send them an email directly. Again, this is sort of as you're in the, in the sales world, it would be called prospecting stage of trying to identify connections that you could potentially reach out to. And again, this is focused on, to Amber's point, on the practitioners of the work rather than the representatives of HR, so that you can kind of build those connections and have those informative conversations about the work that they're doing. So we have a couple sample messages here as if they were emails. So the first one is if you were reaching out to someone who is working in an industry that you're interested in. This is not necessarily, I'm interested in working for your company, but more, I'm interested in the type of work that you're doing. I'd like to learn more about it. We also have a secondary slide. Again, these are meant to be more research for you later as a resource. We'll send these out. But it's important to make sure you really customize these and strategize effectively so to increase your likelihood of getting a response. So this page focuses on industry-specific outreach. The next one focuses on company-specific outreach. So if you have gone through those steps to identify alums or even just staff at an organization that you're interested in working, this would be kind of how you would go about reaching out to them. You want to be very friendly, a little bit informative about your perspective, but not too long. And so this would be a sample of something that would be appropriate to send to an alum that's working at a company that you're applying to, or even if you're not ready to apply, you hope to apply at some point. But Amber, I'd love for you to share your thoughts on, what's going to be best received. What would you advise students to do as they're crafting these messages for alums, or other contacts at an organization to sort of better their chances of getting a response?
Yes, definitely. Good question. I think two key points you always want to make sure you're including, and Laura just covered it beautifully, but what is the connection? So why are you reaching out to them, right? Show them some way that you're connecting to them and have your ask. Put the action item in there, right? You see on both of these examples, would you be willing to speak with me on the phone or on a video call for 15 to 20 minutes, right? You're telling them exactly what you're hoping to get out of the conversation. That's going to help you make sure that, as they respond, that you're able to really connect in the way that you're hoping to. I would say one word of caution, just as you're doing this, make sure that you are coming at it from a networking perspective, right? And looking for information, not, hey, you're, a Georgia Tech alum as well. You're in this company. I really am interested. I'm doing all of this. Would love to work for your company. Can you help me get a job? Right? Like you want to come from a networking perspective, and a referral or an advocate could come from it. Absolutely, which is awesome. But you want to make sure that you're never coming in with that, you know, thinking that you already have a job because of a referral, right? Or because you have that connection that they can pull strings. You really have to still come from that relationship building side, and it can help you get the job ultimately in the long run. But I would just make sure that you kind of phrase your message in a way that is definitely more relationship building, network focused, information gathering, whatever you want to call that, versus, hey, can you give me a job? Because that's definitely not the time or place, right? So I think these examples are wonderful, though. Definitely come back and look at the slides that you get later. They have a really good format. Take note of the signature as well. That puts all of your information really easily in one space. You don't have to send your resume right away, right? But you're still getting all of that really helpful information that the person can see as they're thinking about what you might want to discuss with them. So definitely take note of all of that. I think this is definitely phrased very nicely.
Thought of something else, Sharon. I'm hoping it'll come back to me in just a minute, but we're going to keep going with this conversation on having these networking conversations. Hold on. I'm going to back up, everyone. I'm going to see if I can recall what I was going to say.
Don't you hate when that happens?
Oh, I do.
I just had a great tip for you guys, and it just flew out of my brain.
Oh, it'll come back to me. So thinking about networking in general, what is the value in this? What is the value in pursuing this on LinkedIn versus, at a career fair or at a company information session? I'd love to hear your thoughts, Amber, on, how you utilize LinkedIn and where you see the value in it for students who are on the job search. And I think I almost came up with my thought that hopefully will gel as you share your thoughts on this.
Perfect, perfect. Yes, no, I think, full transparency, the way you look up companies and get information, we're doing the same for you, right? We're looking at your LinkedIn, we're looking at your social networking. We are seeing what do you put out there for the world to see, and how are you branding and presenting yourself? Because ultimately, if you join our company, you are the company, right? Whether you are on the clock, off the clock, in a t-shirt that says our brand or not, you are that organization. You are seen as a face of that organization all the time, online and offline. So it's valuable that you are being intentional with what you're putting out there to make sure that a company is going to be proud to have you be the face of their company, right? So I say that also as just being wary. It's not just LinkedIn, right? You see online networking as a whole. Use your social medias in a way that's going to promote you and not hurt you. I won't preach this. I know that you guys hear this all the time, but be aware of your privacy settings, be aware of what you're putting out there. There are real statistics and research of how people lose out on opportunities because of what they put on social media. So just know we are looking. I am here to break the news. We do it. We look on all of the Instagram, Facebook, I don't know if that's cool anymore, but we look at it all. So definitely want it to help you. It is a great way to get on someone's radar before they put a job up. As you're going to these workshops, for instance, if you're going on campus to different events, the more that I see you, the more I see you engaging on LinkedIn and online with our content, the more I'm going to have you top of mind when we have a position come up, right? We're going to campus to connect with you all, to build relationships with you all, to see, who's going to be the best of the best talent. We want to meet you, we want to hire you, and we might not always have a job that day, that moment, but that stays in our brain, right? We have those names, and the more that you're on my radar, the more you're gonna kind of come top of mind when I have positions, and I'll want you to know about them, right? Also an opportunity for you to build those. We've talked a lot about that. Relationship building, networking, it's so important. Both Laura and I have mentioned to you, it's never going to get less important. We've really built our careers based on networking, as you will too. So take advantage of it, right? Online is the new world. So many people are working remotely. So many events are remote, just like we are right now. Sometimes online is going to be the best way to get in front of people. So it's going to help you also expand. You see here, right out of your current network, how do you meet new people? As well as just making sure how you choose, you want to position yourself moving forward. So really helping you influence what is that brand you want to put out there. And that doesn't have to be the same always, right? You may change interests. You may see new companies as you're going to different things on campus or virtual workshops where you're like, that company seems interesting, or I've never heard of that industry before. Let me look more into it. So you have a plethora of information online and through LinkedIn to get those highlights of these companies and what they do and really help you kind of expand your reach. Maybe you end up in an internship or a role that you never considered before because you really didn't know about it. But as you're expanding in that industry, you found new knowledge and you were able to kind of connect with people outside of the 5 top companies you had in your mind for the last 2, 3 years. So you never know how it can help you and kind of shape your career progression by getting out there and taking advantage of the online opportunity you have.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I did think of my question. I know we have a few more slides to get to, and Amber actually has a few slides about ABB I want to make sure we get to as well. But Amber, so here's my question for you. If a student has found a job on LinkedIn, needs to go ahead and apply before a certain deadline, but wants to then conduct outreach with the organization and reach out to make a connection, even if it's with an alum that's already there. When they're connecting with that person, should they go ahead and disclose that they've applied for a job there, or would you recommend they keep it neutral, that they're just like looking to get more information about the company at that point?
So my thought, that's a good question. My thought, personal opinion on this is I don't think there's any harm in mentioning you've applied. Because I think one, that's going to show that you're genuinely interested, right? You're not just blindly reaching out to alum at this company or any alum that you can connect with, right? You're really saying, hey, I want to work for this company. I've done my due diligence of really putting myself out there. I've applied. I'm, eager to hear back, but I'd love to get more information from you. And I think that might too, if I was on the receiving end of that, that to me would be like, oh, okay, this person really, my information I'm giving them is going to be valuable to their search. That's going to be really helpful to what they want to do. So I think it could be helpful. Also, potentially, right, as you're building that network, it lets them know if they have a conversation with you and they're like, this candidate is awesome. Like, we need them at our company. They might be more inclined to say, you know what, I know you said you've applied. Let me reach out to talent acquisition. Let me let them know I've talked to you. I would love to put in a good word for you if I can. So I think that just opens the door of maybe getting a little bit more of that support if they know that you're really serious.
That's really great to hear. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So here are some questions. This is again meant to be sort of a general resource. I am cognizant of our time here, so I'm not going to go through every single one of these questions, but there's just some sample questions here that you could potentially use depending on what phase of exploration you're in. Are you trying to learn more about that type of work to determine where you want to go? Or have you already identified the path you are interested in taking and are looking to build relationships within that network? I think my question for you, Amber, is, in conversations that you've had with students at this sort of informational interview stage or anecdotes that you've heard from colleagues or practitioners in your field, are there any questions that are memorable to you as like a great question someone asked at this initial networking stage?
It's a great question. Yeah, because I think you definitely want to stand out, right? You want to be memorable. You want to get this general information, but a way to kind of really take it to the next level. I think for me, I'm always really impressed when people ask a question that's very specific to our company. So, for example, ABB, we are all about sustainability, and everything we do has that rooted into whether it's a product, a service, how we do work day to day. That's our top value, sustainability, and how we're creating that better future. So, when students come to me and they're like, hey, I saw this article. You had a manufacturing plant in Italy. They had zero waste coming out. Like that really made me excited because in school I'm doing XYZ that's associated with that. And those are the types of projects and things I want to be involved in. You know, how is ABB really making sure that they are creating a more sustainable future? What goals do you guys have to make sure that you're not just saying this, you're putting action behind it, or whatever it may be. I think for me that always stands out because then I know not only have you researched, are you interested in our company, but your values also align, right? Values are really important. Going back to those soft skills and things that we talked about earlier that aren't always as quantifiable. A company's values and culture is not just words on a wall, right? If it's words on a wall, then it means nothing. It has to be lived and breathed through every single person, top down. So we want to bring in people who share those same values, right? So I think for me, that always gets me excited because culture is a very big driving factor for myself, and making sure that we're bringing people into the organization that really align with what we believe in as well.
Thank you. That's a great point. So I believe our next slide is just some additional resources that you can take advantage of virtually. Some of these are in skill building and in sort of that exploratory phase of things. Forage has some great resources out there in terms of virtual experience programs. They're not quite internships, not quite classes, but they're definitely not internships. But it will give you some insight into new areas and give you some good information. There are plenty of LinkedIn learning tutorials and other online sites where you can upskill in certain areas, especially if you're trying to qualify yourself for certain positions that you haven't had the chance to learn those skills yet. Obviously, you can find resources for learning another language. You can use your online capabilities to build your portfolio or a website describing some of your experiences, especially since COVID came into play. There's opportunities to volunteer virtually or in the community or even work part-time to sort of build out that network, build your skills in an area that you haven't yet had experience in. And then Amber made this point earlier, ask to do more than what you've been tasked with. That's what's going to differentiate you from your peers when you're being considered as a group of early career, early talent, because that's something that's going to carry through and that's going to show an employer that you're a really good investment because you think beyond just what you've been told to do. You can find opportunities to manage a website, manage someone's social media, or even find professional work via, virtual platforms. You can work through your student groups sometimes, and then obviously conduct informational interviews. And then here at the bottom, we just have a sample listing of how you might describe these things on a resume. So if you are between your first and second years this summer and you do not have an internship, as many students don't, but you spend some time really engaging in professional development, career development through some of these activities, this might be a way that you could include that information on your resume to show what it is that you were doing with your. And just some last thoughts. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. We have on here, follow up at least 1 to 2 times on your messages. I would maybe stick with one at the most, just because, if someone's not able to get back to you in a timely manner, then it's not likely to change in the near term. So if you follow up once and don't hear back, then move on and identify another contact. If you do have a great conversation with someone, it can be worthwhile to say, is there anyone else working in this field that you'd suggest I connect with? And that can potentially lead to additional useful conversations. And then lastly, it does take time to pursue this. So please know that you'll probably need to set aside some regular times to do this in terms of building out your profile and then engaging in consistent networking efforts over time to reach out, conduct those informational interviews, etc. Yes, I see in the chat you will receive these slides after the presentation. So I'm going to let Amber give us some information about ABB. And if anyone has any follow-up questions about the presentation, please go ahead and drop those into the Q&A session.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely wanted to share a little bit about ABB with you all. Some of you may have heard of us before, but you might not have, though. So I think it would be great to tell you a little bit about who am I and why am I here, right? So ABB, we are a leading global technology company, as you can see here, really focused in on creating a more productive and sustainable future. I know I mentioned a little bit about that value earlier, but ABB, we have been around for over 130 years. We are in over 100 countries with over 100,000 people in our organization. So we have a very large footprint across the world. We are focused within electrification, motion, process automation, and robotics. We are a company you likely use every single day, but you have no idea. We are not a consumer product, right? We are business to business. So we partner with a lot of the well-known companies that you are familiar with, you use day to day, but we're a little bit more behind the scenes. So I'll quickly give you kind of an example of each of these, since that can be a little bit confusing. Electrification, right? Think smart power, smart buildings, electric vehicles. You live in an apartment. If you go outside, you'll see a huge electrical box, right? Giving power to all of the apartments. Next time you're out there, see if one of yours is ABB, because we create those as well. So we're working with different companies that bring that power to you. Motion, we are partnered with, Universal Studios. So if you've ever rode some of the rides there, we might be helping you move, as well as simple as, when you turn your AC on in the summer, we help create different drives that help that run, or pushing water out of your tap every day. Process automation, that's going to be much more within marine and ports, energy industries, process, working with oil and gas, working with pulp and paper, things of that nature. Robotics, that is pretty simple. It is robots, right? We create robots. So whether it's from a robot that's as small and finite as helping sort medical testing tubes, all the way to a large scale robot that paints cars before they hit the lot. We do all of the things in between. They can work with colleagues or individually. So we do a lot of cool things within technology. Again, if you have questions on that, definitely let me know. That's a quick overview for you. We do offer different program opportunities for early talent. So internships are what we're still hiring for this year. We do still have some summer internships for this upcoming 2022 year. So if you are looking, I encourage you to go to our careers.abb site that you see there at the bottom. Take a look to see what's still available. We do have some interviews going on now, but we have a 12-week program through the summer where you get the pleasure of seeing my face every Friday with a lunch and learn. That might be a selling point or not after this, I don't know, but we have a lot of fun. Essentially, you have a lot of support from myself and the team, from career coaching, professional development, networking opportunities. We have some different team builders for our intern cohort across the U.S. as well. So a lot of opportunity across the entire U.S. for internships. definitely encourage you to check them out if you are still looking. We hire for, of course, engineering backgrounds and majors, but also business side as well. So definitely take a look. Please see if something's of interest and make sure you apply because we are quickly filling those up. And we do have a discovery program as well, which is our rotational program after graduation. Fortunately, we have filled all of those slots for the 2022 class starting this summer. We really interview and hire for that in the fall. So if you're graduating next year, a quick thinking ahead, this is a 2-year rotational program, very similar to the program support with career coaching, professional development, networking, etc. But also you get to experience over a 2-year period some different roles within ABB along a career path that interests you. So really helping you figure out after those 2 years, where do you want to roll off into a position at ABB that you know you're really excited about based on your experiences so far. So that was a lot of information very quickly. I apologize. I'm trying to be mindful of your time. I know you might have something coming up next. But if you have questions, reach out to me. Happy to answer those. But definitely take a look at our career page as well if you're still looking for internships.
Thank you. And yeah, the rotation program, obviously, with ABB is wonderful, but just the career advisor perspective on it, rotational programs in general are really great opportunity for early career. The coinciding professional development and career coaching that goes with it is really valuable for a lot of people who are just starting out. So if you might be a fit for some of those roles and you're going to be a senior next year, then I would definitely encourage you to take a look at those. Just a few logistics. Please scan on the left or check CareerBuzz for all of our upcoming workshops. If you have a question about it as it relates to job search, more than likely we have a presentation on it coming up this semester. That's the place to find all of that. And we'd love to hear from you about how the workshops are going. You could fill out the survey that is on the right and will be linked in the follow-up email as well. We really use that feedback every semester as we set our agenda in terms of the information and topics that we cover. So we really enjoy getting your feedback on those things. Amber's and my contact information is provided here as well if you have specific questions, but we really appreciate you taking the time. I know we've run a little bit over, but I hope the information was useful. And again, Amber, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun and hope to hear from some of you all soon. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Yes, have a good afternoon, everyone. Bye.